The night was heavy with lights, cameras, and the soft murmur of an audience that expected perfection. It was a charity event in Los Angeles, a stage filled with bright decorations, famous faces, and a promise of hope for children in need. Among the many names on the program, two stood out: Ana de Armas and Keanu Reeves. The crowd adored them both. People whispered with excitement, waiting for their turn to walk out under the golden lights. Ana had done countless interviews, films, and speeches before, but tonight something was different. The pressure felt sharper. Maybe it was the cause, maybe it was the weight of people's eyes, or maybe it was her own voice inside telling her she wasn't ready. As her name was announced, applause filled the room. She stepped forward, smiling, her heart beating like a drum. She reached the microphone, her hand trembling just enough for her to notice. The first few words slipped out, gentle and warm. The audience leaned in. But then, just as quickly, her throat tightened. Her voice cracked. A pause came, one that lasted too long, heavy and uncomfortable. The silence grew, stretching like an endless hallway. Her chest tightened. Her lips moved, but the words would not come. She faltered. For the first time in years, Ana de Armas stood frozen on stage, her mind blank and her eyes wide. She could hear the faint coughs in the crowd, the shuffle of restless feet, the click of cameras that never missed a stumble. For a moment, she thought of running. She thought of escaping behind the curtains and never looking back. But then, she felt something strange, an energy from the side of the stage. She turned slightly, and there he was. Keanu Reeves, dressed simply in black, standing just out of the spotlight, watching her with calm, steady eyes. He didn't move forward yet. He didn't need to. His presence alone seemed to tell her something. You are not alone. Ana tried again, but her voice shook, the words breaking like glass. Her eyes burned. The crowd was kind, waiting, but she felt exposed. She felt weak. Her thoughts screamed, "What if they see me as a failure? What if this ruins everything?" Her breathing quickened, panic tightening its grip. And then, slowly, Keanu stepped forward. The sound of his footsteps on the stage floor was quiet, but to Ana, it felt like thunder. The audience gasped, surprised, but their faces softened as he reached her side. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't take over. Instead, he stood beside her, just close enough so she could feel his presence, his calm like an anchor. He leaned slightly toward her, his voice low, meant only for her ears. "Breathe," he whispered. "You don't have to fight this alone." Those words broke through the storm in her chest. She closed her eyes, inhaled, and exhaled slowly. The silence stretched again, but this time it was different. It wasn't judgment. It was anticipation. Hope. The audience wasn't against her. They were waiting with her. And Keanu, still standing quietly at her side, gave her the strength she thought she had lost. She opened her eyes, her lips trembling but her voice finding a thread of steadiness. "Sometimes," she began softly, "we are afraid of showing weakness. But tonight, I realize that even in weakness, there is strength, because we are never truly alone." The audience leaned in, and a ripple of warmth spread through the room. Her words were slow, but each one was honest. The crowd wasn't hearing perfection anymore. They were hearing truth. Keanu didn't smile, didn't move, but his steady presence was a shield. And Ana, piece by piece, rebuilt herself right there under the lights. Her speech wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. By the time she finished, her voice steady at last, the applause wasn't just polite. It was thunderous, rising to the ceiling and rolling back down like a wave. She stepped back, tears at the corner of her eyes, and Keanu gave her only the smallest nod. No words, no attention on himself, just quiet respect. She knew in that moment that something had shifted inside her. It wasn't about being flawless. It was about being human, and about the people who chose to stand beside you when the silence threatened to break you. As the night went on, people whispered not about her stumble, but about her courage, and about the man who stood beside her without taking her place. And deep inside, Anna felt stronger than she ever had before. The event ended with music, laughter, and photographs, but for Anna, the night carried a different weight. When the curtains closed and the lights dimmed, she found herself backstage, her hands still trembling. She tried to smile as people congratulated her, but inside she was replaying the silence, the crack in her voice, the long pause that had almost swallowed her whole. She sat in a corner for a moment, away from the crowd, breathing slowly. Her heart was heavy with doubt. Had she embarrassed herself? Had she shown weakness in front of too many eyes? These questions pressed hard, and the noise of the celebration felt distant, almost unreal. Then she heard a soft voice. "You did well," Keanu said. He stood nearby, leaning slightly against a wall, his expression calm, his eyes steady. He wasn't dressed like someone chasing attention. He blended into the shadows, almost as though he had been there the entire time, waiting for her. Anna shook her head. "I froze. I couldn't even speak." Keanu stepped closer, his voice quiet, his tone gentle but firm. "You spoke. Maybe not the way you planned, but you spoke. And people listened. They'll remember what you said, not what you lost." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with uncertainty. But it wasn't perfect. Keanu gave a small smile, one that didn't carry judgment but understanding. Perfection isn't what moves people. Honesty is. You gave them honesty tonight. And that is stronger than perfect words. Anna lowered her gaze, letting his words sink in. She had always believed that strength came from control, from rehearsing every line until it was flawless. But tonight had proved otherwise. The crowd hadn't turned away. They had leaned in closer. Maybe, just maybe, they hadn't seen weakness at all. Maybe they had seen something real. For a moment, silence passed between them. Not the heavy silence of fear, but a quiet that carried comfort. Then Keanu spoke again, his voice low but certain. "You don't need to carry everything alone. Sometimes strength is knowing when to let someone stand with you." His words struck deeper than she expected. She realized he hadn't saved her by speaking for her. He had saved her by reminding her she was capable. He had stood there not as a shield to cover her, but as a presence to remind her she was not alone. She felt her shoulders loosen, the weight easing slightly. She nodded, whispering, "Thank you." Keanu simply inclined his head, as if no thanks were needed. "Rest tonight," he said softly. "Tomorrow you'll see things differently." Later, in the quiet of her home, Anna sat by the window, the city lights glowing beneath her. She thought of how close she had been to breaking, how strong the fear had been. And yet, she also thought of his calm presence, the steadiness in his voice, the quiet respect in his eyes. It wasn't just that he had been there. It was how he had been there. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet strength. That night, Anna realized something she had never understood fully before. Resilience doesn't mean never faltering. It means finding the courage to rise again. And sometimes it comes from the kindness of someone who simply refuses to let you fall alone. As she closed her eyes, she felt a spark of strength return. Tomorrow, she thought, would be different. She was no longer afraid of faltering because she had seen what could come after, the chance to rise stronger. Morning light spilled gently into Anna's apartment, the soft glow brushing across her face as she woke. The silence of the night before was gone, replaced by the buzzing world outside, cars passing, voices in the distance, the hum of a city that never stopped. Yet inside, she still felt the echo of last night. The stage, the silence, the falter, and then Keanu's quiet voice telling her to breathe. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table, her phone in hand. Messages poured in, friends, colleagues, journalists. Some praised her courage, others called her moment authentic. No one spoke about failure. Still, a part of her couldn't let go of the memory of freezing in front of everyone. Her mind wrestled with two truths. One told her she had shown weakness. The other whispered she had shown strength. She stared at the phone, unsure which truth to believe. Then a new message appeared. It was from Keanu. Short, simple, and without decoration. Walk with me today. Downtown. Noon. Anna blinked at the words. There was no question in his tone, only a gentle invitation. Part of her hesitated. Why would someone like him take this much notice of her? But another part felt an undeniable pull, as if the moment was not about him, but about what she needed to understand. She typed back one word. Okay. Noon came quickly. The sun was high, warm but not harsh, and downtown was alive with movement. When Anna arrived, she found Keanu waiting near a small bookstore, his posture relaxed, his clothes simple, blending in as though he belonged to the ordinary flow of people. He noticed her approach and nodded softly, as though her being there was enough. You came, he said quietly. You asked, she replied, her voice unsure but steady. He gestured for her to walk with him. They moved together through the busy streets, passing shops, street musicians, children laughing. No one seemed to notice them much, or if they did, they gave them space. For a while they walked in silence, but it was not an empty silence. It was calm, almost grounding. Finally, Keanu spoke. You're still thinking about last night. Anna exhaled slowly. I can't stop. I keep hearing the silence. I keep seeing myself frozen. He nodded. Good. Let yourself remember it. Don't run from it. That's where the strength hides. She frowned slightly. How can weakness hold strength? Keanu glanced at her, his eyes thoughtful. Because people don't connect with perfection. They connect with truth. And truth often comes with cracks. When you faltered, you showed them you were human. When you stood up again, you showed them you were brave. Anna walked a few steps in silence, his words pressing deep inside her. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She had seen it in the eyes of the audience, compassion, not judgment. Maybe he was right. Maybe her stumble had carried more meaning than flawless words ever could. But it hurt, she whispered. It felt like falling. And yet you're here, he said gently. Still standing, still walking. That's what matters. They reached a quiet park, the noise of the city fading into the rustle of trees and the laughter of children playing nearby. They sat on a bench, the sunlight streaming through branches above. Keanu leaned back slightly, his tone calm. Everyone falters, Anna, even the strongest people. The difference is what they do after. Do they hide, or do they rise? Last night, you rose. That's what people saw, and that's what will stay with them. Anna lowered her eyes, her hands folded in her lap. You make it sound simple. It is simple, he said softly, but not easy. Those words struck her heart. Simple, but not easy. That was the truth she had been avoiding. She realized then that resilience wasn't a natural gift. It was a choice. One made in the quiet after the storm, when it would be easier to turn away. Sitting there under the warm light of day, Anna felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, yes, but alongside it was a new seed of strength. She was beginning to see what Keanu had seen in her all along, that her stumble was not the end of her story, but the start of something deeper. And as the children's laughter filled the air, she whispered almost to herself, "Maybe falling is not failure." Keanu glanced at her, his calm eyes holding a faint warmth. "Falling is how we learn to stand taller." For the first time since last night, Anna felt her lips curve into a real smile. The following week felt like a test. Every day, Anna received calls from producers, invitations from magazines, and messages from fans who said her words had touched them. She read their messages carefully. People spoke of courage, of feeling seen, of finding strength in her pause. It was strange to her, almost unbelievable, that her faltering moment had given someone else hope. Still, every night when she looked in the mirror, she remembered the silence. She remembered how small she had felt, how helpless. No praise could fully erase that memory. It clung to her, whispering doubts, daring her to forget what Keanu had told her. One evening, as she sat in her living room, the phone rang again. This time, it was Keanu. His voice was calm, steady as always. "I want to show you something. Tomorrow. No cameras, no crowd." "What is it?" she asked softly. "Just come," he replied. "You'll understand." The next morning, she found herself in a quiet studio tucked away from the city noise. The place was simple. Bare walls, soft lighting, and wide wooden floors. It looked like a space for rehearsals, maybe meditation. Keanu was already there, seated cross-legged on the floor, waiting as though time belonged to him and not the other way around. "Why here?" Anna asked as she stepped inside. He gestured for her to sit across from him. "Because here there are no eyes watching, no expectations, only truth." Anna lowered herself to the floor, feeling the smooth wood beneath her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, but it wasn't heavy. It was almost gentle. Finally, Keanu asked, "What do you see when you think of last night?" Anna hesitated. "I see failure. I see weakness. I see the moment I froze." Keanu shook his head slightly. "Look deeper. Beyond the fear. What else was there?" She closed her eyes, forcing herself to relive the moment. She remembered the heat of the lights, the weight of her silence. She remembered her voice breaking. But then, she remembered his footsteps, his whisper telling her to breathe, the way the audience leaned closer, waiting with kindness instead of judgment. Her breath slowed. I also see strength, not just mine. Yours too, but also theirs. The audience. They didn't turn away." Keanu's voice softened. "Exactly. Weakness is not the enemy. It is the mirror. It shows you who you really are, and it shows you who is willing to stand with you." She opened her eyes and met his gaze. "And what did you see?" He paused, thoughtful. "I saw someone who was brave enough to be real. That is rarer than you think. Many hide behind walls of perfection. You didn't. You let them see you. And that takes more courage than a flawless speech ever could." Her chest tightened, not with fear but with emotion. No one had ever said it that way before. To her, faltering had always meant weakness. But to him, it had meant truth. Keanu stood slowly, offering his hand. She took it, rising to her feet. He led her to a mirror fixed against the far wall. "Look," he said simply. She gazed at her reflection. For a moment, she only saw the familiar, her face, her eyes, the trace of doubt still hidden inside. But then, with his words echoing in her mind, she began to notice something else. Strength. resilience, a quiet fire that had not been there before. "Do you see it?" Keanu asked. She nodded slowly, her throat tight. "I think I do." "Then remember this," he said, his tone firm but kind. "Your strength is not in never faltering. It is in rising again when you do. And you will rise, Anna, higher than before." Her reflection blurred as tears filled her eyes, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of release, of understanding. For the first time since that night, she felt free. Standing in that quiet studio with Keanu's calm presence beside her, Anna realized that the silence on stage had not broken her. It had rebuilt her. It had forced her to see herself clearly, to find the strength she didn't know she had. And in that moment, she whispered softly, more to herself than to him, "I am not afraid anymore." Keanu gave the faintest smile, his voice calm as ever. "Good, because your story is only beginning." Days passed, and with each sunrise, Anna felt a little lighter. She went to meetings, spoke with friends, and even accepted a few interviews. This time, when questions about that night came, she did not shrink. Instead, she spoke openly. "Yes, I faltered. Yes, I froze. But it taught me something about myself, and maybe that is more valuable than being perfect." The honesty surprised the journalists. It made the headlines, not as failure, but as resilience. Yet life always finds a way to test the lessons we claim to have learned. One evening, Anna received a call from an international charity group. They wanted her to give the keynote speech at a global event. Millions would watch online. Thousands would be seated in the hall. It was bigger than anything she had ever faced before. For a moment, her chest tightened, the memory of silence pressing against her. She almost said no, but then she remembered the mirror, the studio. Keanu's steady voice telling her strength was in rising again. She took a breath and said, "Yes, I'll do it." After she hung up, fear returned, sharp and real. But this time, fear did not control her. It fueled her. On the day of the event, the hall was massive, its ceiling high like a cathedral, its seats filled with faces from every corner of the world. The energy was heavy, buzzing with expectation. Backstage, Anna stood with her speech in hand. Her heart pounded, but her feet were steady. Keanu appeared quietly, almost like a shadow, but his presence filled the space. He wore no suit of authority, no sign of pressure, just calm, steady energy. "Nervous?" he asked softly. "Terrified," she admitted with a small laugh that trembled at the edges. He nodded. "Good. That means you care. Fear and care are twins. Don't push it away. Use it." She looked at him, her eyes searching. "And if I falter again?" Keanu's answer came without hesitation. "Then you rise again. And if you fall once more, you rise once more. That is strength." The stage manager called her name. It was time. Anna stepped into the light. The hall hushed, the crowd waiting. She stood at the podium, her speech resting in her hands. She took one deep breath, remembering his words. Then she began. The first lines flowed smoothly, her voice carried, steady and warm. The crowd leaned in, listening. But then, halfway through, it happened. Her throat tightened. Not as sharp as before, but enough to bring back the memory of that first stumble. Her chest tightened. Her hands trembled. A hush fell. The silence stretched. For one painful second, she thought it was happening all over again. But this time, she remembered. She placed the speech papers down. She looked out at the faces before her. She let them see her vulnerability, let them see her steadying herself. And with a deep breath, she spoke without the paper, her words flowing not from rehearsed lines, but from her heart. "I stand here, not as someone flawless, but as someone human. I have faltered before, and maybe I falter now. But faltering is not the end. It is the beginning of honesty, and honesty is what makes us stronger, together. The crowd was silent, not with judgment, but with awe. And then, as her voice grew steadier, as her truth poured out, the silence broke into applause. People rose to their feet, clapping not for perfection, but for courage. Anna's chest loosened. She felt tears gather in her eyes, but this time they were not from fear. They were from freedom. Backstage, when she returned, Keanu was waiting. He didn't clap, didn't cheer. He simply gave her a nod, his calm eyes saying more than words ever could. Anna smiled, her voice soft. I didn't just survive this time. I lived it. Keanu's faint smile appeared. And now you are stronger than before. She realized then that her stumble had not been her downfall. It had been her rebirth. The days after the global speech felt different. Anna walked through life with a lighter step, not because the fear was gone, but because she had learned how to carry it without letting it crush her. People stopped her on the streets, not to ask about her movies, but to thank her for her words. Mothers spoke of daughters who felt stronger. Students spoke of daring to speak despite their anxiety. Strangers admitted they too had once faltered, but never rose again, until now. She realized then that her silence that night, her stumble, had given birth to voices she would never meet. But still, she wanted to thank the one who had quietly guided her through the storm. Keanu never asked for recognition. He never stood in the spotlight of her journey. But without him, she knew she might have walked away from the stage forever. So one evening, as the city lights glowed, she invited him to her home. It was simple. No grand dinner, no reporters, no noise. Just two people sitting at a wooden table, tea steaming between them. Anna spoke first, her voice quiet but firm. You saved me, Keanu. Not by taking over, not by carrying me, but by standing with me. No one has ever done that for me before. Keanu looked down at his tea, then back at her. You saved yourself. I only reminded you that you could. She shook her head, smiling faintly. You could have taken the spotlight that night. You could have covered my failure. But you didn't. You gave it back to me. And that changed everything. His eyes softened, carrying the weight of quiet wisdom. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about knowing you can rise. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we need someone to remind us. Anna leaned back, her eyes shimmering with emotion. Then let me ask you, what about you? Who reminds you when you falter? For the first time, she saw something in him, something unspoken. A shadow of old battles, scars unseen. His smile was faint, almost sad but full of honesty. Life has a way of teaching all of us. I have fallen many times, and sometimes it was strangers who helped me rise. Sometimes no one did, and I had to find it alone. But maybe that's why I stood with you, because I know what it feels like to face silence alone. The room grew quiet, but it was not heavy. It was filled with respect, with something deeper than words. Anna realized then that kindness is born not from perfection, but from scars. And Keanu, with his quiet presence, had turned his scars into strength for others. She reached across the table, her hand resting gently on his. Then maybe this time, I can be the one who reminds you. You are stronger than you know. He didn't move, didn't break the silence, but his eyes, steady and calm, held gratitude. Weeks later, Anna stood on another stage, not for a movie, not for a charity, but for a small gathering at a community center. She spoke to young people who had lost faith in themselves. She told them about the night she faltered, about the silence, about the strength that came after. She didn't hide the fear. She showed it to them, because fear was part of the truth. And in the back of the room, almost unnoticed, Keanu sat quietly, his presence calm as always. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need the stage. It was enough for him to see her shine. Anna finished her speech, the room filled with applause. But more than that, she saw hope in their eyes. And in that moment, she knew the truth. Her falter had never been her weakness. It had been her gift. Later, as she left the hall, she walked beside Keanu under the evening sky. The air was cool, the stars faint above the city lights. "You know," she said softly, "the night I faltered, I thought my career would break. But now I see, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning." Keanu gave a small nod, his voice steady. "Sometimes the cracks are where the light enters." She smiled, her heart full. "And sometimes the people who stand with you make sure that light never fades." They walked on, no cameras, no stage, no audience. Just two souls, bound not by fame but by kindness, humility, and respect. Anna knew her journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more moments of fear. But now she carried something inside her that nothing could take away. The strength to rise again, and the memory of the man who had taught her that silence is not the end, but the space where courage is born. And for the first time in her life, she was not afraid of faltering. She welcomed it because she had learned that every falter could become the start of something stronger.